Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Me, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. Shanks is the only Yonko that remains of the old generation, but being a part of the old generation, his powers are at their peak, possessing incredible Haki control, superior in fact to all the Yonko, just like his former Captain Roger. And we saw recently in chapter 1055 how he was able to use his Conqueror's Haki to communicate with an admiral possibly tens if not maybe hundreds of miles away through just the power of his Haki alone. This burst of Haki not only started knocking out younger people on his crew, but it showed that Shanks was feared even by the proudest of admirals, revealing there is even more about Haki than we already know. During the conflict in Marineford, Shanks wasn't just responsible for keeping a greater disaster from happening there, but he was also responsible for getting Kaido to retreat before reaching the battlefield. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the huge role that Shanks played in this Marineford arc, how Shanks' actions could have prevented this conflict from even being more destructive, and how Shanks was able to get Kaido to go back to Wano. But before we dive into the video, if you're new to the channel, or even if you've watched a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you'd leave us a like, or even subscribe and maybe leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out and motivates us to make more content. And if you'd like to help us out in a bigger way, consider sharing the video or the channel with a friend. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So my friends, during the preparations for Ace's execution, Kaido saw an opportunity at Marineford because he knew Whitebeard would not allow one of his sons to be executed. So Kaido prepared to go there to confront Whitebeard. But Shanks also learned of this intention. So before going to Marineford to stop the conflict, he decided to intercept Kaido because he would present an even greater threat if he were to reach Marineford. Even before the conflict even occurred in Marineford, Shanks had been trying to prevent it from starting. In fact, when he felt the scar that Teach had given him so many years ago hurt, Shanks knew something big was coming. So he tried to warn Whitebeard that Ace would be in danger. In one of the more iconic scenes of One Piece, Shanks went to Whitebeard's ship alone, and while just using his Conqueror's Haki, he was able to knock out some of the weaker pirates on Whitebeard's crew. And it also even started doing physical damage to the ship. And he also just did it because he didn't want other people around to interfere with his conversation between himself and Whitebeard. During the conversation, Shanks asked Whitebeard to order Ace to return to the ship and to give up his search for Teach because he felt that Teach was planning something big and that Ace would be a necessary piece to complete this goal. If Ace persisted in looking for Teach, it would be dangerous for his own life because Teach is a dangerous man, and underestimating him would be a big mistake for Whitebeard and Ace to make, because even though he appears to be a weak and cowardly man, Teach is very intelligent and cunning. Shanks next revealed to Whitebeard that Teach was the one responsible for causing the scar on his face, and that he said at the time of the attack, Shanks was fully aware he hadn't been snuck up on, but still received that knock to his face and could do nothing about it. However, Whitebeard refused to give up on his revenge, and he said he needed to teach Teach a lesson that one should not betray not only their crew, but also take the life of a brother, that this act was unforgivable and that he would not allow this act to go unpunished. They next took their swords and clashed, causing the skies to split in half, just as a means of demonstrating their strength to each other, not really with the intention of fighting. After some time, Ace managed to find Teach, and during the confrontation between them, because of Teach's fruit, he was able to absorb Ace's power and was able to defeat him. After the capture, Teach turned Ace over to the Marines to have his life taken in public. When Whitebeard found out that Ace was gonna be part of a public execution, he gathered his fleet and headed to Marineford. So again, when Kaido learned that Whitebeard was going to Marineford, he wanted to go there himself to confront him, which made many Marines and other people worried, because if these two particular Yonko met in Marineford, together with the three admirals, it would just be a recipe for disaster. But because Shanks learned this information too, again, he went and intercepted Kaido's ship and prevented him from going there. And because he was trying to avoid further destruction and loss of life in Marineford. Now, in fairness, we do not know how this event between Shanks and Kaido went down, but it's pretty likely that Kaido may have just backed off after sensing Shanks' Haki, or at least his presence. Because even though Shanks is the youngest Yonko, he presented a really real threat to Kaido. As it's been demonstrated, Shanks appears to have the highest level of Haki, not only among Yonko, but maybe of anyone on the planet. So he'd easily be able to wound Kaido with his sword and delay him. Not even Kaido's Haki and great endurance would be able to stop against Shanks' strikes. So because Shanks' Haki level was so much higher than Kaido's, this big beast may have just retreated in a peaceful way. Because if he had taken Shanks there, it would have been not only difficult for him to fight Whitebeard afterwards, he may not have even made it to him in the first place. At the very least, his body would have been totally exhausted from the fight against Shanks. So Kaido just decided to retreat and figured that he would have another chance to face Whitebeard in the future, which allowed Shanks to then go to Marineford without any trace of a fight. Something that reinforces this theory is then a Ritz event that happened in chapter 1055 of One Piece. After sensing Ryokugyu's presence in Wano, Shanks used his Conqueror's Haki to get the Admiral to stop fighting the inhabitants of Wano. With just his presence, Shanks seemingly was able to communicate and frighten the Admiral into retreating from Wano. Something quite ironic to see. I mean, after all, Ryokugyu arrived in Wano with the goal of capturing Luffy. Leading up to this moment, Ryokugyu had been shown to be really proud and, dare I say, cocky, and really had no worry about invading this country full of enemies just to capture Luffy. But after feeling Shanks' Haki, the Admiral knew he didn't want to cross blades with this pirate. Even Big Mom has talked about Shanks' Haki being incredibly powerful, and that it would be necessary for not only her crew, but also all of Elbaf's warriors to unite just so they would have a chance, not a guarantee, but a chance to defeat Shanks. Which may mean that Shanks is in fact the character who has the most powerful Haki in this moment. And it may even match or exceed Roger's, because we saw that Shanks is able to make his Haki reach very long distances in very specific ways. But even at a considerable distance from the island of Wano, he was still able to make everyone in the country feel his Haki. So perhaps it was because of this advanced Haki that Shanks was able to frighten away Kaido, forcing him to go back to Wano and thus preventing him from reaching Marineford and confronting Whitebeard. Unfortunately, even though this meeting between Shanks and Kaido took place long before the beginning of the confrontation in Marineford, it still made Shanks very late to the battle, and many people had already lost their lives. The biggest losses, of course, being Ace and Whitebeard. But when arriving in Marineford, Shanks realized that everyone was fighting without any real purpose or reason. That the battle was basically already over, but everyone just refused to stop fighting. So Shanks appears on the battlefield to end the conflict in what can only be described as a triumphant entrance. Shanks arrives just as Akainu is about to attack Kobe, and Shanks defends Akainu's magma punch that was gonna hit Kobe with his sword, but appears to be something that requires absolutely no effort for Shanks. The Marines then noticed the presence of the other members of the red-haired pirates, as they wondered how Shanks just managed to get into Marineford so quickly when they had received word that he was fighting Kaido elsewhere in the world. After stopping Akainu's attack, Shanks then tells Buggy to give Luffy his straw hat back, because he had lost it after losing consciousness when he saw Ace lose his life. And Shanks even offers Buggy a map so that his old friend could give Luffy the hat and get some treasure in the exchange. When Lucky Roo, a member of the crew, asked if he was sure he didn't want to personally hand Luffy his hat after not seeing him for more than 10 years, Shanks admitted that he would have loved to, but it just wasn't yet the right time to meet Luffy. For Luffy had not become strong enough to fulfill the promise that they had made to each other so many years ago, so he would just wait a little while longer, even though he was really eager to see his little friend again. And with that, Shanks and his crew ended the confrontation that was taking place in Marineford, and he asks Marco and his allies to retreat from Marineford peacefully because there was no more reason to fight and lose their lives. To further discourage anyone else who wanted to fight, Shanks offered to be the new target of the battle. So whoever was still willing to fight, he would be the new enemy. But this causes everyone to just give up fighting because nobody, not even the admirals, wanted to take on Shanks. For they had already suffered so many casualties fighting just one Yonko. So if the Marines took on Shanks, it would be the end of everyone in that location, because even the admirals were weakened having fought Whitebeard. Shanks even went so far to ask Teach if he wanted to fight, but Teach denied his offer, saying that it just wasn't the right time for him to take him on in a duel again. After all, he had just gotten Whitebeard's power, so it was necessary for him to learn how to use this great power of the Quake fruit and become even more powerful. So Teach, together with his crew, retreated from the fight and leaves Marineford himself. And to wrap things up, Shanks then tells the Marines that he wanted to give Whitebeard and Ace the burials they deserved, so he would be taking their bodies to a place where they could be buried and be left alone. And an amazing show of respect, Fleet Admiral Sengoku then orders the Marines to allow Shanks to take the bodies of these two pirates, and that any consequence of this decision would be his full responsibility. Later, we see that Shanks buried the two pirates in Whitebeard's homeland, as this was a special place for him, and to honor his captain, Marco also stayed in that place to protect the people who inhabited it. After burying the bodies and paying paying a special tribute to Ace and Whitebeard. Shanks and Marco say words of respect to these two pirates who had lost their lives fighting for their dreams. And thus, the Great Battle of Marineford ends. Shanks, with just his presence, is able to intimidate some very powerful enemies. In fact, even the admirals, showing that his Haki level is much more powerful than any other existing pirate or in fact marine in the world. And mind you, this is also without a devil fruit. Shanks is still able to take on any powerful enemy with his Haki alone, which makes him a great threat worldwide, something that even Kaido respected and feared. Even though he was a young Yonko, Kaido still considered Shanks a danger because of his advanced level of Haki. So because of his credible mastery, it made Shanks feared all the more by the rest of the Yonkos. And there you have it, friends, the reason why Kaido gave up on going to Marineford and how Shanks' Haki plays a role. But for now, I'd love to know what you think about it. Do you think there could have been another reason why Kaido didn't decide to go up against Shanks? I mean, he is able to fly. I mean, couldn't he have just gone over him and made it there long before Shanks? So could there be another reason why he just didn't want to kind of go? Could Shanks have offered him something? Also, what do you think would have happened if Kaido had made it to Marineford? I mean, how much more destructive could it have been? And finally, whenever we talk about Shanks, there's always this air of mystery around because we don't really know what his intentions are. So for you, where do you think he is? Is he friend or foe or something else? Let us know what you think in the comments below. With all that said, my friends, I want to thank you all so much for watching the video all the way up to the very end. Be sure you comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like or hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.